At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions. From Magi Quest, a live action game that takes place throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part? It's their biggest sale of the year. Only on August 4th, book a family suite starting at just $84 a night. It's the 84-degree sale from Great Wolf Lodge. Only on 8/4. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com. Consistency does not mean predictability. Consistency doesn't mean let's know everything. Consistency means doing something consistently, getting a result, sticking with it, giving yourself the opportunity to learn over and over and over again.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Ed.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We are back on our recording schedule, and it had me thinking about how many episodes are available for listeners to reach back to. Flusterclux.com/episodes, and there are 280 episodes just sitting there. And is any Flusterclux episode truly happy if no one is listening to it?
That's right.
It's kind of like our own island of misfit toys.
Oh.
They're just waiting to be listened to.
Yeah, that's true.
So someone listening to you talk about school avoidance, it could be their water gun that squirts jelly.
Or the train with square wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're all there. There's no paywall. They're all free. And even as someone who edits the podcast and listens to each episode multiple times, there's such value, even if you have been a listener for years, in re-listening to it and getting that information a second time.
Well, and you know what? When I listen to a past episode, because sometimes accidentally one pops up, I have no memory of saying what I said. The same thing happens if I read a part of a book that I wrote. I'm like, wow, I wrote that? Even if you've listened to it before, it actually does help to get a review of it. You know, I'm in the season now where I'm working with schools and getting all of my school trainings together and that kind of stuff. If I'm going to go do a training at a school, here are 4 episodes that you should have your staff or you should have your parents listen to before I show up, because it just lays the groundwork. And when you say 280, I can't believe that we've come up with 280 different things to talk about.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Some of them are best ofs, but 98% are not.
I know.
So speaking of the coming year, you have some trainings that you could share with folks.
Yeah, let me just do a little plug for what's upcoming. So on September 9th and 16th, I'm doing a virtual parenting webinar. Last spring, I did one for parents of elementary school kids. This one is going to be focused on teens. And if you sign up for the webinar, it's recorded. I'm doing it live on those 2 dates, but also it's recorded and you can go back and watch it later. And also, I would love it if your teen joined you during the webinar. So that's September 9th and 16th. All of this information is on my website, lynnlyons.com. You just go under the trainings and webinar tab. And then I also have one September 18th. That's in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's live, in person, full day. That's for educators, clinicians, parents. If you want to come. That's focused on elementary school kids. And then the following week on September 25th, same location. This one is focused on teens. And I'm really focusing on the combo for teens of anxiety and depression together, because those things really hang out. And it's such a struggle for parents when their teenager is depressed in their room, not going to school. Clinicians, parents, again, if you want to show up, happy to have you. All of it is on lynnlyons.com. Registration is open now.
So today we are going to talk about consistency.
Yes.
And the importance of consistency.
The reason that this topic came up, the reason that I am interested in talking about this is because I said to somebody recently, so it's really important that you are consistent with what we're doing. And the way the parent took it was, I have to make sure that my child knows exactly what we're going to do and that we're really consistent in our routines. And that's not what I meant. What I meant was, I need you to consistently employ the strategies that we're working on. And sometimes what happens is that many people, parents, schools, clinicians, think that the way to help an anxious kid is to make sure that everything is consistent.
Predictable.
Yeah, that's a better word for it. They confuse or they mistake consistent for predictable. And I really want people to know the difference, that when I'm talking about consistency, I'm talking about consistently stepping into situations where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So it's a little bit tricky, because if I said, hey, be consistent with your kid, they might think, all right, we have to make sure that we always leave the house on time and that we make sure that they know exactly what's going to happen and that they have a plan, and that when we go to bed that we consistently say this or whatever. It's not that. It's consistently giving your kids opportunities to step in, to experience things that make them uncomfortable, to experience big emotions, to experience frustration, to experience a level of distress as they're learning something new. And I just want that distinction to be clear.
We have a new school year starting in a few weeks. What would be a method in which parents might aid an anxious child who's a little nervous about perhaps going to a new school in the fall?
So what you will see over and over and over again is, make sure that you give your child all the information that they need in order to enter school. Like, go over the plans and blah, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, okay, we're starting a new school. We don't know, I'm just going to drop you off and I hope it goes okay. And you can figure. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that now is a good time to practice talking about introducing the idea that we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And if we are saying what we want our kids to do is consistently be challenged or consistently experience uncertainty, how might you do that? Well, you might say to your kids, well, we know that the first day of school is September 1st or whenever it is, and we know that your teacher is going to be Mrs. Jones, but we really don't know exactly what your class is going to look like. We really don't know exactly what it's going to feel like to start this new school. You may not even know exactly where you're going to go. Maybe they have an orientation day. Maybe they have a move-up day. Maybe they had that one in the spring. But what the message you consistently want to give your kids is that it is okay not to know exactly what's going to happen. There is a balance of, we have these plans combined with, let's step into things in which we're going to feel uncertain and uncomfortable. The consistency comes from giving your kids and giving you this practice not knowing. Say you've got a kid who's entering middle school, right? And they're really nervous. Oh, maybe this is the first time they're going to change classes, or they're going to have to use a locker. Being able to say to them, yeah, you're going to have to figure it out with some practice. And I talk to kids about the first day, the first week, the first month. The first day of school, oh my gosh, you probably don't know much of anything. The first week, you're starting to figure it out. And maybe you know what the schedule is going to be like. You figured out where your classes are. The first month, you're going to have this thing down. You're going to know what the routine is. It's going to feel like you've been there for your whole life. But really laying out for kids that the goal is to not know, and as weird as it sounds, to consistently not know everything that's going to happen. I see plans all the time put in place for kids that say it's really important that they have all the information up front. It's really important that they know exactly what's going to happen. It's really important that there are no surprises. And that is feeding the problem for sure.
That's aiding the very disorder that you're trying to often help clients heal from.
Correct, because we know anxiety's goal is to know everything. Yeah, I was just talking to a family and they're going on a little trip and they're going to be on a ferry and they've never been on a ferry before on this trip. It's a short ferry ride. And of course, the instinct of the parents is to get all of this information about the ferry. What's the safety record of the ferry? And how many times has the ferry crashed? And what do they do if the weather's bad? Do they cancel the ferry? How many people are going to be on the ferry? And I can see this anxious family just really working to try and get as much information as possible to take out any uncertainty. And I really advise the parents to say, we're going to go on the ferry. We have reservations for the 9:00 ferry. And that we're going to bring our car on the ferry. That's about all that we know. We can't predict the weather. We can't predict exactly how long it's going to take. We have an idea. We can't predict exactly where we're going to sit. We can make plans, but we don't know. And that's really the language we want to use as we're starting something new with kids. And we want to use that language consistently. And even having a consistent phrase that you use, a phrase sort of like, well, this is a new experience, so there are some things we know and some things we don't, something like that.
You've talked about how at the dinner table, there's value in saying, what occurred today that was unexpected, and how did you handle it?
Right. What was the unexpected thing? We have to give kids the lesson over and over and over again that we can't know. I was just talking to one of my delightful young adult clients today, and she's in that big transition between graduating from college and finding a job and that kind of stuff. And I was saying to her, if I look at my life, it was funny. I said to her, okay, you're going to get some old lady advice here. I said, I hate to give you old lady advice. And she said, isn't that kind of what you do for a living? Like you sit here and you give old lady advice? I was like, yeah, I guess that is what my job is. I said, if I think about what turns that my life took or the things that my life is consisted of, a lot of them weren't planned. I planned to go to graduate school. I got my degree. I planned to take my licensing exam, but I didn't think I was going to be living in Concord, New Hampshire. I really didn't. And what are the consistent things that I know about myself? Big picture, consistent things. Well, I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at stepping into situations where I don't know people. I'm good at getting stuff done. I'm good at figuring out what I need to do in order to get to the next step. I'm pretty good at taking professional risks, but I didn't know all the details. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. So this idea, again, that consistency does not mean predictability. Consistency doesn't mean let's know everything. Consistency means doing something consistently, getting a result, sticking with it, giving yourself the opportunity to learn over and over and over again. The content doesn't matter, is what I'm saying, as usual.
Great. Well, we'll take a break and we'll come right back.
At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions, from Magi Quest, a live action game that takes place throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part? It's their biggest sale of the year. Only on August 4th, book a family suite starting at just $84 a night. It's the 84-degree sale from Great Wolf Lodge, only on 8/4. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com. All right, it's a little bit bittersweet that summer's coming to a close, but maybe getting into the routine again, organizing your house, getting some new sheets for your bed. I mean, maybe it's time to start fresh, right? New school year, new look, better organization. Wayfair has amazing items for you to refresh your workspace, maybe to get a new desk for your kid. I'll tell you, buying stuff for your kid feels pretty good. My son just bought his first house, and as a housewarming gift, I'm going to let him pick out a Wayfair standing lamp. That's what they need. There are so many to choose from. The prices are incredible. If he orders it, the delivery is going to be so fast. The process is so easy. It is convenient to use Wayfair to get everything your home needs this season. It's got a huge selection of outdoor items and indoor items. Get organized, refreshed, and back to routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Do you have a tough time tracking where your money goes? It's hard. We've got so many different places to spend money now. It could be on your streaming apps. It could be buying coffee. It could be paying attention to all the different bills that you have to pay, the expenses for your kids. It's confusing. Finances can be messy. Monarch Money acts like your own personal CFO, gives you visibility and control so you can pay attention to where your money is going, and gives you complete financial command for your accounts, your investments, and your goals. Did you know that financial stress is one of the top reasons relationships fall apart, other than in-laws? Monarch Money makes conversations easier. You can track shared and individual accounts. You can set goals together. You can keep money check-ins drama-free. Plus, you can even share access with a financial advisor or a tax pro at no extra cost. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code FLUSTER at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code FLUSTER. Okay, we're back.
So, Lynn, you see many, many families in your office, and can you share an instance in which a family came to you and you sensed quite quickly that they were perhaps looking at the word consistency in a different way than you would value and hope for? And what well-intentioned patterns might they be repeating that were not helping their child?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what happens all the time. So a family comes in. It doesn't matter, actually. Sometimes they've been in therapy before and sometimes they have not been in therapy before. But I will say to them, I'll get an idea of what's going on. And then I will say, what have you done, either on your own or through the instruction of someone else? What have you done to try and address the problem? And they will very often say, well, we have worked really hard to make sure that she knows exactly what's going to happen. So I had a family come in, 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. They specifically wanted to see me for the 8-year-old. The 10-year-old was pretty anxious too. And this little girl had been having difficulty going to school on a regular basis. She was having difficulty. Even the parents weren't able to go to the movies or go out to dinner. They couldn't leave her alone for any period of time. And they were feeling pretty hogtied by this, of course. So I said, well, what have you done to try and help her? And they said, well, we know that we want to create a really, and here's another word that is a little red flag for me. We really wanted to create a very safe, you've heard me talk about the word safe, predictable environment. And so we make sure that we don't disrupt her routine. We make sure that if we have to go somewhere or there's a reason that we're not going to be able to be home at a certain time, that either her grandmother or her favorite aunt comes to stay with her. We have a family calendar so that she can look and see exactly what's going to happen. And so our job as parents, they said, we've realized our job as parents is to make sure that we provide a safe, predictable, and very consistent environment for her. And then what follows quickly is sort of like, okay, Let me explain to you how that feels good and how it works in the short term, but here's what's missing from that. The ability of your daughter to tolerate when things don't go as planned is not there. And that's her anxiety disorder, right? Her anxiety is rigid and demanding, and that cult leader is saying things have to go a certain way. But in putting together this plan, you are serving the disorder, you are serving the cult leader because you're not allowing her to develop the skills that she needs in order to tolerate not knowing. And I used a metaphor, an analogy, which I very often do, is that if you had a child who was little, I said, remember when your daughter was a little toddler sitting in the high chair, the goal is for her to be able to learn how to feed herself or to use a spoon or use her own sippy cup. And if you said she has a really difficult time getting the spoon into her mouth when she's eating her little yogurt, or she has a really difficult time not spilling her sippy cup. So what we've decided is to make sure that whenever she eats, we provide a safe and consistent environment so that she never makes a mistake. She never spills the yogurt. She never spills her sippy cup. We want to make sure that she is able to eat her breakfast and eat her lunch in a very safe and predictable way.
And when you talk about the child being anxious, we also have to remind ourselves that we as parents will often support that behavior or initiate that safe, in quotes, scenario because it makes it in the short term a bit easier on us. It avoids freakouts, it avoids disruptions, but in the long term, you're feeding the issue on a grander scale.
Correct. No pun intended. And the other thing too is that we also know from a lot of research that parents who have a lot of difficulty tolerating a child's distress, tolerating their frustration, tolerating their struggle, they will fall back on this idea of let me make it safe and predictable and consistent so that I don't have to see them struggle. So even the simple example of, say, your child is learning how to build something with Legos or learning how to put together a puzzle, and you can see them struggling, like they can't find the piece or they're putting it in and it's not fitting and they're getting frustrated. If a parent has difficulty tolerating their child's struggle or frustration, they tend to jump in very quickly so that the child doesn't have to feel that way. But what we know is being able to feel that way is a really important part of building resilience, of building frustration tolerance, and just basically of learning. With this family, with this little girl, I had to really turn their idea of consistency on its ear and say, here's what I want you to consistently do. I want you to consistently come up with ways in which she's going to feel uncomfortable. We're not going to go crazy. We're not going to say, look, we've never left you alone before with anybody but grandma and your favorite aunt. So we're going to have a complete stranger come and spend the weekend with you. We're not going to do that. But to introduce the idea that being uncomfortable and not knowing exactly how things are going to happen is part of life and is something that we're going to incorporate. On a weekend, for example, they would say, well, weekends are really hard because if she doesn't have a schedule, she has a really hard time not knowing where I'm going to be or not knowing where my husband is going to be. So we make sure that on the weekend, she knows that we're going to go grocery shopping at 9. Daddy's going to go to his meeting at 10. I'm going to go to Home Depot at 12. And they had it all planned out.
I would imagine that for the second child in the family, this could be disruptive, dominating, and not certainly modeling great behavior for the second child. But even if the second child happens to not struggle with anxiety as demonstrably as their sibling does, they're getting pulled along in a rowboat that they may have no interest really being a part of.
Right. Exactly. That does happen for sure. Siblings get really frustrated. And that's why I have siblings come into the sessions, because lots of times they are the speaker of the truth, which is kind of interesting. But also what can happen too is that the siblings raised by these parents also begin to believe that that's how things are supposed to go. There are many adults that I talk to that say to me, I didn't know that this was kind of not normal until I went to college, or I didn't know that this isn't how all families did it until I started my own family. And so siblings can get sort of like, all right, well, I guess this is what we have to do. I guess this is the way it works. And they're in the rowboat they don't want to be in. They often might adopt the same philosophy of life, is that everything is better if it's planned and predictable and safe. Or if they are a very different type of child, so that they're pushing back just temperamentally or their personality, they may be seen as the problem. So the kid who's the anxious one, who buys into or demands that everything goes smoothly and consistently, that's easier for the parents, because maybe they're like that too. And the child who's like, really, we have to do this? Can't you get another babysitter? Or why can't that kid is like, oh, you know what? You're causing a problem because you're making it harder for us to do the consistency. And, lots of times there's some interesting family dynamics that you have to pay attention to. The same thing happens if you've got two different parenting styles, that one parent wants to be really spontaneous or have an unscheduled day, and the other parent is like, no, we have to keep it consistent. And that causes problems. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how differing parenting philosophies between two partners can be tricky, and that often the more anxious one will kind of drive the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we take a break, and then when we come back, let's talk about if someone is listening to this and says, what Lynn is saying is resonating to me, but my partner is going to be pushing back with me when I propose these changes.
Yes, and that will be relevant because the family that I started talking about, that was a situation that they were dealing with. In an interesting way, there was somebody in the family who was pushing back. So I'll come back and I'll tell you what I did with that. Because if you're listening now and you're saying, okay, so that's the problem. Yes, this resonates. What do I do? What do I say? We'll talk about that when I come back. I love summer. I just love summer. I love being outdoors. I love being active. And I also love how easy it is to enjoy nutritious meals. Green Chef is the way to make it happen. Green Chef makes it easy to spend less time in the kitchen so that you have more time to enjoy the outdoors without sacrificing delicious, wholesome, nutritious foods. Green Chef's real, clean ingredients help you build lasting, healthy habits without the hassle. There are salads ready in just 5 minutes. There are protein-filled breakfasts. There are delicious meals that take less than 3 minutes to cook. I love the Cashew Crunch spinach salad. It was fantastic. I also am going to continue having the lemon, cucumber, and mint quinoa salad. Fabulous. My husband had the pork fillet with lemon dill sauce. He'll definitely have that again. So delicious and so easy. Make this summer your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50fluster and use code 50fluster to get 50% off your first month. Then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50fluster at greenchef.com/50fluster. Growing up, I was pretty lucky. My dad worked in a bank and my mom was really smart about money. We talked about money a lot, and I learned from an early age what saving was, what spending was, how to budget. And I really think that it's great for kids to have this information early on. I taught my kids about money, and you should teach your kids about money and let them practice. With Acorns Early, your kids can learn their money lessons early and often. Acorns Early is the smart debit card and money app that grows kids' money skills as they grow up. You can start with in-app chores tracker and teach your kids the value of $1. Then let your kids set their own savings goals and start building healthy money habits early. Just like I did. Ready to teach your kids the smart way to earn, save, and spend? Get your first month on us when you head to acornsearly.com/fluster or download the Acorns Early app. That's 1 month free when you sign up at acornsearly.com/fluster. Acorns Early Card is issued by Community Federal Savings Bank, member FDIC, pursuant to license by MasterCard International. Free trial for new subscribers only. Subscription fee starting from $5 per month unless canceled. Terms apply at acorns.com/earlyterms. So the summer's winding down, and it's time to think about refreshing your wardrobe. For me, I start traveling again, so I'm looking for staple pieces for the season ahead. Quince nails it with luxe essentials that feel effortless and look polished. I need things that are easy. I need things that are reasonably priced, and I need things that travel well so that I look my best when I arrive, when I'm on stage. It's important to have quality and comfort and good, solid pricing. Think cashmere sweaters. Think cotton sweaters starting at just $40. I have ordered a few silk tops that will be so versatile and so easy for me to wear. They're washable. The best part, everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. For your next trip, for your next gig, like me, for your next fun event, just for your next season in life, go with Quince. Elevate your fall wardrobe essentials with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. Okay, so now back to the show.
So, Lynn, we were talking about the instance which you experience with some consistency, I imagine, so to speak, which is two parents in the child's life, one who feels perhaps aligned with the notions that you're presenting to them, and one who doesn't because it's clearly in contrast to how things have been operating for a while.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle those situations?
Well, so let's go back to the people that I was talking about earlier, right? They have a little girl who has trouble being away from her parents, and their goal has been to make everything very consistent and predictable. And they think that's the way to handle the anxiety. It's been working in the short term, sort of, but not really, because here they are in my office. So what was interesting about this family, remember I said earlier that the only people who could babysit were the grandmother or the favorite aunt. And the place where the dispute was happening was that the grandmother, who was the mom's mom, the grandmother was not willing to change things up at all. She was a firm believer and that her little granddaughter needed to know exactly what was going to happen. The goal was not to upset her. They shouldn't do anything. They shouldn't make any demands of her. The goal was to make sure that basically the cult leader stayed in charge. The aunt, who was from the other side of the family, who was the dad's sister, was like, look, this is nuts. You guys are absolutely inhibiting her independence. She should be able to go and do things on her own. She's at an age where she should be going and visiting friends or having sleepovers. And you could see it sort of played out kind of on opposite sides of the family. The dad was more laid back and the mom came from the real anxious upbringing. But I really had to work with the grandmother and the aunt, and in particular the grandmother, to get her up to speed also. If you asked her, if you said, so grandma, what do you think? Like, your granddaughter will only stay with you. She was like, as it should be. That is exactly correct. Because if somebody else comes in this house to take care of her, she will be very upset. That will make her very uncomfortable. And the mom obviously was raised by this person who was rigid and nervous. What I had to do, and I include anybody in the family in the sessions, whoever is a part of this cult is welcome to come into the sessions. I had to work with the grandmother. The aunt was easy. She was on my side, so to speak. I had to work with the grandmother to get her to see that this long generational history of anxiety was going to inhibit what she truly did want for her granddaughter. Honestly, it wasn't that hard to convince her. It wasn't like she was, no, I refuse to listen to your expertise, or I refuse to look at it. It wasn't like that. But it was really, really difficult for the grandmother to allow her granddaughter to have any distress. And one of the things I did find out, which was pretty interesting, is the parents were trying to do this. So they would say, you know, you're going to go to school and it's okay if you feel uncomfortable. We're not going to come and pick you up. The granddaughter figured out pretty quickly that her grandmother could be her ally when she was working with the cult leader, and started reaching out to the grandmother and sort of throwing her parents under the bus, that they were being mean and it was scary. she didn't like what they were doing, and then the grandmother was coming back. So I had to work with that whole family because here was the message I wanted them all to have. Right back to this idea. The consistency is about consistently managing things that make her uncomfortable so that she has the confidence to know that she can manage things that make her uncomfortable. When I said it to the grandmother in that way, my goal for your little granddaughter is to have her be able to step into the world and manage her emotions, manage her frustration, manage her friendships. If we keep doing this, we are getting in the way of her being able to do all the things that I know you want her to be able to do. So it wasn't hard to convince grandma. People say to me all the time, well, easier said than done. Yeah, no kidding. Easier said than done. But with some practice, we made some progress. I would say probably within 8 months, that little girl was going to play dates and the parents were able to go out to dinner. They found a really lovely babysitter who was a neighbor down the street, who was a high school girl who would come to the house. So it didn't take a ton of time to go from the wrong kind of consistency, which is predictability, to the new kind of consistency, which is look how much you can handle. It feels good.
So, Lynn, when you have an 8-year-old, as you've discussed, this young girl coming to you in your office and speaking with you, one of the advantages you have is saying, well, I know what that 8-year-old will likely be as a 16-year-old if the ocean liner is not shifted some degrees to the west. What do you see as the typical outcome of an 8-year-old along that path when they become 16 or 22?
Such a good question. The 8-year-old who believes that life should be consistent, believes that life should be predictable, believes that she doesn't have the ability to manage, a few things can happen. One is that the rigidity becomes more and more prominent, and activities and the willingness to step into new things, the willingness to try new things, the willingness to be an adolescent, which means that you're supposed to go farther and farther away from your parents, starts to get inhibited. And as I said when we first began, I was talking about my training in September, the connection between anxiety and depression is pretty profound. The ability to tolerate uncertainty often leads to kids feeling more and more depressed as they move into adolescence because their life is more and more restricted. So that's what I see. I can see that too. And then one of the things I also see is that you get this sort of rigidity in relationships and almost this perfectionism that if I come up against something that doesn't go the way I want it to go, or that I feel like I can't handle, then I am going to try and control the situation. I'm going to blame. I may just quit and avoid, but those kids really struggle during the middle school years because relationships in middle school are really kind of all over the place. And the rest of the seventh graders aren't going to cooperate with your demands for predictability and consistency. So you see these kids having difficulty in that way. And oftentimes what I see, not all the time, but oftentimes what I see, if parents haven't figured this out or talked about this or recognized the pattern of behavior in their family, the parents then tend to be the parents that blame other kids for not cooperating with their kids. The parents are saying like, those kids are mean, or those kids are rejecting my child, or those kids bully my child, or they won't let her participate, not really recognizing that the rigidity and the need for predictability could be a source of this.
Which can be ultimately isolating for the child.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we see when you don't address this and you don't recognize these patterns. I always say the earlier the better, but it's never too late. But if you can address it earlier, that means you're really going to help your child in a critical developmental period, which is adolescence, when the relationship stuff is primary and the connection stuff is primary. If we've got this rigid need for things to be consistently predictable, safe, et cetera, what we see is if the child isn't adaptable, if they aren't flexible, if they aren't tolerant, If they can't handle things being unpredictable, they pull back, and then the isolation happens. One of the prime ways I see this happening is the middle school field trip, which a lot of schools, there's like an environmental camp, or in New Hampshire, they all go to Washington, D.C. in the spring. And the child that has the most difficulty with needing things to go a certain way generally tries to get out of the trip, misses the trip. And parents will say, well, I don't want her to be uncomfortable, or she's going to have a really difficult time being in a room with somebody because this and this and this and this. So the child misses the trip. They think that's great. Why force the child to go to Washington, D.C.? Who cares? Blah, 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 blah. Then everybody comes back, and guess what they're talking about? Those kinds of experiences, those kinds of trips, those kinds of social, be it a dance or a trip or whatever, those are the fruits of discussion for kids, and that's where kids connect. So then they often feel left out.
And we've talked about it many times on this podcast, but for those who haven't heard it recently, that phrase you refer to as an extinction burst, you got a little bit from grandma in the example you referenced earlier. A predictable mini rage at things going differently than have been the norm.
Yeah. And being able to tolerate that mini rage is a key part of this. This happens many times with families, is that there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak. So I will have the parents do something differently. And even in a session, the child will get mad, either at me or at the parents, maybe crying, lying on the floor. Maybe they storm off. If they're older, they go, give me the keys to the car, and they leave. And the parents get distressed. I can see it. Oh my gosh, they're upset. What do I do? What do I do? And I say, nothing. It's okay. Let them cry. And then if we don't do anything, this has happened like 4 times in the last month. If we don't do anything, within a few minutes, the kid's okay. Now, if the child has learned that this is the way that I get my parents to come back into the cult, and they have more staying power, if this has been a long-term pattern, there are some kids that stay mad for an hour, but still it's an hour. Parents will say to me, what do I do if she cries for an hour? I go, well, listen to a podcast that's 63 minutes long. So, so it's okay as you're changing this, and as you're changing this definition of consistency, they're going to have distress. As weird as it sounds, and as backwards as it sounds a lot of times when I introduce this to people, my goal is actually to do things that get kids upset enough in a loving way, but get them upset enough that they know that they can get through it and they can handle it and they can get to the other side. It's the prevention, the restriction of them moving through it that actually predicts more problems. Not that they're feeling upset, but that they don't have the opportunity to work through the problem. When I'm talking about consistency, consistently allowing your child to be on the struggle bus with your support, your love, your empathy, not so much your words, keep your mouth shut, the consistency of getting to the other side. It's sort of like when I go to the gym. The workouts I do at the gym are hard. I talk a lot about the fact that the skill I learn at the gym is the ability to suffer, because I know I'm going to get to the other side. And I don't give up in the middle of my workouts that are hard. I don't give up because I have done them enough to know I'm going to get to the other side. And that is a very concrete skill. It's not like I'm training to be a power lifter, but it is a skill that's applicable to a lot of things in life where I know it's hard and I know I'm going to get to the other side. That's what I want parents to allow their kids to do. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Amber's drawings might be...
You have to promise not to freak out. You're not an evil person just because you drew pictures.
Amber drew that?
What in the...
Sketch, in theaters August 6th. Get your tickets now at angel.com/sketch.